the Radio Forest Podcast.
Hello there, Forrest. How are you, man?
Doing pretty good. Where are you calling from today? Are you in South Wales?
Yes, I am indeed. Not far from Cardiff.
Are there any major slang differences from South Wales that wouldn't make sense in Stockport?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, there's a whole different language. You know, I couldn't possibly start to understand what... If you hear people speaking Welsh, it's alien to anybody. They have their little colloquialisms that you get used to. I've been living here for now 25 years, so I'm used to they're not quite fully accepted me yet.
It's Geoff Downes from Asia, Yes, and the Buggles. The 5-CD box set is out now, the reunion albums from Asia 2007 to 2012. When Asia got back together with the lineup in 2006, was it hard at all, and how did that start? Like, who kicked off, let's get back together and do some music?
To be honest, it was almost as if we'd never stopped. Even though there's a 15-odd year in between or whenever, it was almost like it was actually more than that, probably 20 years in between. And it was really just like getting back on the bicycle again, you know, and riding off. It was very natural. I think that a lot of people thought maybe there would be fractious moments, but we sat in a room first and we said, is everybody okay with this? Does everybody want to go ahead with this? And it was a case of, yep, I'm in. You know, everyone had pre-commitments at the time. So it was, I'm in. And at that point, I think we got back into a rehearsal room and started to play as a band, and it was like you turn the clock back 20 years, you know, it was that magical. What it dawned on me was that nothing ever sounded like that when the four players get together, and we're all very much individual talents as much as anything else, I think when the four of us got together, it made a specific sound, and I remember talking to the other guys about this, says, nobody ever sounds like this, you know, you could put X, Y, Z and all whoever together, but we had that unique sound between us.
When you first got into bands then, and when you started back with the Buggles, was there like keyboard players to look up to? Were you kind of carving your own path, or was it piano players that inspired you?
Well, no, I think Keith Emerson was the main one that really inspired me, because when I was a teenager, I went to the Isle of Wight Festival in 1968, and I saw The Nice with Keith Emerson, and he was stabbing his Hammond and riding around the stage and being a total showman. And I thought, well, nothing had ever been done like that before with the keyboard player. It was normally the guy who sat quietly in the corner plonking away on a piano or organ or whatever. This guy suddenly took keyboard playing to an extreme level, and I thought, well, if that guy can do it, that's what I want to do. So he was that inspiration that took me to a level of thinking, well, this is what I want to do. This is the way I want to go, and so I'm very grateful to Keith. I got to know him very well later in life as a friend. And I always said to him, I said, probably don't realise, but you inspired me enormously to do what I do now.
How much of it was a surprise that MTV became as big as it was just playing music videos? You guys were the very first video ever played with Video Killed the Radio Star. Were you hesitant, or they're like, hey, we're going to play your video? You're like, yeah, that's great. Have fun. Knock yourselves out. Or were you like watching, waiting, and seeing what would happen?
Well, no, because it was more in hindsight then, because MTV was only a really small deal when they first launched. I think it was basically just a cable channel in the northeast area as much as anything. Maybe in a few other pockets of places, but it was not a big deal that it became within the space of 3 or 4 months. So when someone told me that they'd used it and said, oh, there's this cable channel opened up in New York or wherever, and they used Video Killed the Radio Star, I thought, well, that's cool, but I didn't think it was like groundbreaking, because at the time nobody knew how massive MTV would become, and of course it snowballed overnight almost and suddenly became the thing. I didn't attach that much significance to it, to be honest.
What about working on the Rock Aid Armenia? That's such a cool project, but more specifically, there's a really good video of you and Alex Lifeson from Rush playing Smoke on the Water. It just seems like musically, you guys are like really locked in. Did it feel that way, or is that just sort of as being in as many bands as you've been, that's the way it always goes, or was that more of a special musical connection?
Well, what was interesting with that particular collaboration was that I was the co-producer on that album, so we lined up all these guitarists to play effectively solos and the riff on the Smoke on the Water remake. Of course, we had like the top guitarists in the world, talking about Dave Gilmour from Floyd, Richie Blackmore, of course, who did the original.
Brian May, Tony Iommi.
Brian May, Tony Iommi. So all these guys were incredible. And, I'd not worked with too many of these guys before, or if any. Certainly, when I saw Tony Iommi playing, I was completely blown away. He later became a friend, and we went to Armenia together, so that was cool. But I had no knowledge. I'd seen Rush before, I think in Montreal, when we were recording an album there, and I went to see them. But I didn't realize how great as guitarist Alex Lifeson was until he came in and he started playing on this track, and I thought, wow, this guy's really good. When people name guitarists who've influenced them, he's not a guy that would normally come up in the top 10, of guitarists. People have mentioned Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen or Steve Vai, Brian May, whoever. And you wouldn't normally get Alex Lifeson to come up in that discussion. But to me, he was the all-encompassing, brilliant guitarist that I'd give him due credit for. And it was great to have that little banter with him. I think I was going out to a dinner somewhere, so I was dressed in a dinner suit, and it was like, I just said, we hopped off in there, we just did a bit of dual banjos together, which was great.
The Clamshell box set, the reunion albums, 2007 to 2012 from Asia. It's Geoff Downes, also in Yes, and the Buggles. It also has the 2-CD live recording live in Tokyo. Geoff, hey, thank you for taking the time and chatting with us today.
Oh, no problem, man. Nice to talk to you.